Okay, so now we're going to program the AP side of the controller. So we're going to basically set up our network, or networks if we decide to have multiples, and then once everything's set up and running, we can then connect our AP. So we've got a couple of APs we're going to connect to the network once we've set it up. So let's look at the software. So down the left hand side you'll find in the menu option AC control. So if you select the AC control, you will see 4 options in front of you: group members, batch upgrade and details. So we've got options there of some of the things we can do. The group is where we actually set up the networks, which we'll come to in just a sec. Members, we can basically see which devices are connected. Of course, at the moment there's none at the moment apart from the actual controller itself. The upgrade option allows us to upgrade firmware, and as the tag suggests, we can batch upgrade as long as the devices that we've got are all the same. So if you've got a series of Air 3s or Air 13s or WAPs or whatever you're using, if they're all the same, you can actually upgrade them all at once. Just be careful if you've got a combination of WAPs and Airs that you don't accidentally update some firmware into the wrong device if you are doing any upgrades. The details list there just shows details of the connected devices. Okay, so we're going to look at the group. That's the bit that we're most interested in, because that's where we're going to actually set up our wireless network or networks. So if you click on group, you'll see you've got a series of options there. So just going to talk about the options across the top first. The WLAN is the wireless LAN group. So with this setting, you can actually enable groups of APs to transmit different SSIDs and passwords should you want to. Quite useful if you've got a PDQ machine or you wanted a basic guest network. There are other applications that you might find that's useful for. So you'd have to go through the process. We're not going to do it in this video, but you'd have to go through the process of setting up a group for then certain APs to broadcast, and then basically you tag the APs and you force them to broadcast within that group. In brief, that's what you do. So in order to set one up, you click plus. So we're not going to do that in this video. I'm just going to cover the other points here to talk about. So the page in front of you is all shows all about the 2.4 gig wireless network. So if you've only got 2.4 gig access points, obviously you don't need to worry about the 5.8 gig menu. If you are using dual band access points, then obviously you're going to need to consider what you're doing with the 5.8 page as well. And as you'll see across the top, there is a button that you can click to switch to 5.8. So you just literally click that, and then the options in front of you will be for the 5.8 gig. In addition, the button just alongside the 5.8 is the advanced button, and that's a global advanced menu that covers both bands. There are advanced menus within each band, so you can configure each band individually should you need to or want to, but within the global advanced menu there are a few settings there that you can adjust that will affect both bands if you're broadcasting dual band. Alright. So we're going to keep it simple for this video. I mean, we can expand it, and in other videos we'll probably look at ways of providing or setting up a more advanced system, but we're going to keep it simple for the purposes of this one. So you'll see in our client network option we've got a wireless option which you can either disable or enable. So obviously we need to make sure that's going to be switched on, otherwise there'll be no broadcast. You can actually hide the SSID at this point, so if you wanted, once it's set up and you decide that you want to have it as a hidden network, you can set up the network, and then as a user, as a wireless client, you can manually select, if you know the combination of the SSID and password, you could potentially manually select a network that would otherwise be hidden to other users. That's just an option that you've got in there, and again it's just a toggle switch, so you just switch it on or off. So we're not hiding it because we want it to be visible, because we want people to be able to access it. So the hide SSID will be switched off. Below that you'll see the default SSID or name of the Wi-Fi, which as you can see for this is CFGWPOE, which is just the code of the controller. So this is where you'd insert the client network name. So whether it's Jones Network or the red line or whatever it is that you decide or is required for the client to use. If you don't encrypt, which is the next field along, then obviously it will be an unsecured network. So which some networks, that is an option that you may want to go down. So certainly keep that in mind, that you can either force an encryption on it or leave it as unencrypted. And in fact, if you're using an authentication system, which is something that you can do with the controller, which is one of those little screens that pops up when you log in and you have to put in your credentials, then you might decide to have an unsecured network and manage the control or the security via an authentication. That's a whole separate thing, but that's something that you can do. If you wanted to have more than one network broadcasting on the 2.4 gig, then you just click this plus over here, and as you'll see, another set of fields appears. So you can just simply add in the details of that other network if you wanted to or needed to add one. Obviously the 5 gig band is exactly the same, and if you're familiar with how to manage a dual band network, then you will know or be aware that if you set 2 separate SSIDs and passwords, or even if you have 2 same SSIDs but the passwords are different, they will remain 2 separate networks. So general practice is that you would have, unless there's a particular reason why you wouldn't, but you would have both networks to be mirrored so that you could allow the client devices to seamlessly hand over between the 2.4 and the 5 gig where appropriate. So again, that's not a given, it just depends on how the network should be managed. On each page you've got an admin network, which you probably aren't going to change. It's there. It's actually disabled by default, but you could use it if you wanted to manage your network by having access via a exclusive admin network. And then there's also an advanced option, which some of these things that can be sort of manually modified, things like whether you want to broadcast on a specific fixed channel or just leave it as an auto, things like how wide a bandwidth you're going to broadcast and those kind of things. So you've got the ability to make those changes. Make sure if you do make any changes that you click apply, otherwise then when you navigate away from the page that you're on, you'll find that the settings will obviously go back to what they were before. A couple of quick notes on the global advanced network, which is on this tab here. So just looking back at the software, you'll see that there's a few things that are quite useful and important. One of them is about the advanced Wi-Fi settings and roaming settings. So again, you can enable Wi-Fi isolation, which is obviously useful. You can, if you click on the next tab here, you'll see that you can disable or enable Wi-Fi roaming. If you've not encountered this before, that enables seamless handover of the client wireless devices between APs. So within this menu you can manipulate at what point the device will get handed over to the next AP. By default it's set to a threshold of 65 dB, but of course if you wanted that to be handed over while the signal strength was that bit stronger, if there were more APs in closer proximity, then you may decide that you want to modify those settings, and that's done within this menu. And the last thing in here is about a timed restart. This is quite useful if you do want to set up a facility whereby the network will restart itself automatically, typically in the middle of the night, either once a day, once a week, whatever you want to do. That can be done within this setting, and obviously you just adjust the settings appropriately. And again, if you make any changes, then make sure that you click apply. Okay, so I think that probably covers the actual group settings. So once you've obviously set up your SSID and password, when you connect your APs, which I'm going to do in just a moment, they will assume the settings that you have already preset in your device. Okay, so at this point we'll plug in our APs. So we've just got a couple here. We've got an Air 3, which is one of the ceiling mount access points, and we've also got a WAP-U, which is the in-wall single band access point. So I've just got them on the end of patch cables. Now you notice we don't need any power injectors because the controller is going to supply power and data to both of the APs. They'll take a minute or so to boot, and if you remember from the overview video, if you did see that one, we talk about autonomous control, where the controller has control over these devices. So whatever these are set to, so they could have been preset and used for another application, or they could have been set up independently from the controller. Whatever was set in them will now be wiped by the controller's settings and credentials that you've put together, that we've just done a moment ago. So when we want to see them appear, as I say, they'll take a minute or so to boot. You actually click on the members, which I mentioned briefly earlier, option, and you'll see them appear. You'll see their MAC addresses, you'll see the IP addresses that have been assigned to them by the controller. It will, if you click on management just here, you'll see that it identifies the device as either a WAP or an Air or whatever the particular device is, and obviously there's various bits of information here. Tells you how much data they've passed in and out, what they're broadcasting their default SS or whatever the SSID and password is that you set. There's a number of things you can do once these members appear. You can, as mentioned, you can upgrade their firmware if you need to. You can actually individually edit the controls should you need to do something specific with an AP. In most cases, you're probably not going to, because you can allow the controller to control the strength of the transmission. They're going to control the Wi-Fi roaming, which is to do with handing over the client wireless devices from one AP to the other. And that's the beauty of the controller, because you've got the device there that's designed to control the system, and that's what it basically does over the APs. Okay, so once the network's up and running, you can then connect your WAN input cable to your main router. Because don't forget, we've already configured the WAN and the LAN, which was covered in another video. So if you haven't seen it, check those out. Obviously, we've now finally configured our wireless devices and the actual wireless network that we're transmitting in a very basic sense, and we can take it to other levels, and we'll look at that in subsequent videos. But certainly for now, that pretty much covers getting the network up and running. So if you haven't seen them, there are other videos that you can look at within this series about setting up and using the controller, or have a look at our website, which is antiference.co.uk, for more information.